tell us, because everyone's always interested, how your family ended up and you grew up in Hawaii.
Okay, well, and I hope I don't bore you, for those of you who heard this before or who know me. My father and mother got married in California. I was born in La Jolla, Southern California. My sister is 2 years older, so she came before me. You didn't hear that from me. Anyway, and I have a baby sister. Her name is Julie. We were living in California. Life was grand. My dad is a surfer, was a surfer, and lived in the water. He got this brilliant idea. He wanted to move to Australia and surf in the big waves. So much to my mother's chagrin, she had no idea that she was going to be uprooted, but she finally gave in. We took the Matson line down south, and we landed in New Zealand. We lived there for a year. I asked Mom, how come we never got to Australia? And she says, I don't know. So we never got to Australia, but New Zealand was an experience. It's a beautiful island. Mom finally put her foot down and said, okay, we got to go back to America. I've had enough of this cold weather. She's very, very, very adverse to rainy, cold weather, kind of like Seattle. So we got back on the ship and we sailed north. And the first port of entry was Honolulu. And my mother's eyes got about this big, and she said, we're not going back to California. We're staying here. So we got off the ship. My dad went into Honolulu, into Waikiki, and found us this little tiny apartment. We moved in, and our life started there. And even though I was born in California, I call Hawaii my home because it's every bit of my memory, it's every bit of my emotional growing up. All of my memories are still living there. So life was quite nice in Honolulu. We lived at Diamond Head, which is that iconic mountain that you see in all the postcards. We lived right down at the base of that mountain. And my father was an entrepreneur. He built his own business. My mother eventually came to work for him, and life was good. I was happy as a clam, and growing up in that kind of an environment is pretty unique. You can ask Mari, she's from Hawaii as well. You probably want to ask me about what's been going on. You mentioned that. So a few years ago, I remember, Judy, I remember you saying in one of your talks about not going wider, but going deeper. And in my brain, that I had intuitively, immediately, I knew what that meant. And I started diving into what is called the esoteric knowledge. This is information that came from, I don't know how many thousands of years ago. It's pretty concisely written in the Kabbalion, which is something I'm going to talk about in a few weeks, so you'll hear about that. But I read these books by these amazing authors. This turn of this, what we call this New Thought, really started in the 1880s and has continued on. We call it New Thought, New Age. We thought we invented it, in the 1960s, but we didn't. Actually, this is a reference to this old knowledge. And I've put together, I can't do anything without notes, so if you don't mind.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Use your notes.
Okay, so what I thought might be pertinent is from my discoveries about myself, is through my the big themes in my life. I think everybody can recognize those moments in life when you don't know why, but something comes knocking and you are sent off in a direction, and that's your soul talking to you. So these are soul contracts, and these are my soul qualities, and I don't like to call attention to myself, and this is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I'm going to do it because I was told to do it. They urged me, they said, this is important, you need to share this. Self-awareness is the key to knowledge. Self-awareness is understanding. Self-awareness is everything. So if we know these things, we can listen. We will hear the voice. There's no doubt about it. Every one of you, I'm sure, has heard it. You can feel it in your gut. You can feel it in your heart. But you often, if you're tuned, you can hear it up here. So anyway, enough of them. So these qualities, the love of imagination. My mother told me when I was little that I was a real quiet child, very pensive, very, leave me alone. I just want to be in my own little corner. So it's, I came in this way. I can't help it. Not that I hate people, but, there's times when aloneness is really, you need it.
It's important.
It's important.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all right. I lost myself in the world of books. It was a way to escape. It was a way to find happiness and peace. My parents had a very lively emotional life. They argued a lot. So when I wanted to get away, I went to my room and I read. Also, I invented games with my childhood friends. I'm sure this is all common to everybody, but the imagination as a child is a world that you can build yourself. Nobody else gets to go there except you, unless you want to share it with other people. So I invented games. I made little treasure maps, and we'd go around the neighborhood and discover things. We put on plays, family plays, in my garage, in my house. And I also, and I've never told my husband this, I invented a coded language when I was about 7. This was a language, like when you were a kid, you could do how did that work? I don't even remember. You took the letters and you switched them somehow, and you could write notes to each other, and nobody else could read them. I invented this language because I had this childhood crush. So we'd write these notes, and then we'd fold them, and we'd put them around the neighborhood to find them and then answer them. So there's the imagination. My love of science and health. When I was in grade school, I can remember a teacher asking the kids, go and look at something in nature, and then I want you to write something. I want you to document it. So from that moment on, I found the little subject of my paper, and it was a spider. It was a banana spider. And I watched it spin its web, and I took down notes about how it was able to build this beautiful environment so it could catch food. I mean, it was the whole thing. So, and it taught me how to be still and to observe. And I guess I was, 5th grade, about 9 years old. When I was 16, I read a book on yoga, and I discovered the health benefits of yoga. I quit eating meat, and much to the horror of my mother, of course, she thought I was going to, be malnutritioned, but somehow we made it through that. And in college, I chose dental hygiene. There again, science, health. My love of music, beauty, art, and self-expression. We took hula lessons, my sister and I, when we were little children. We were about 7, and we performed at, it was a concert hall in the park, in Kapiolani Park. And I found this recently. My 1st grade teacher wrote in my report card, she said, Joan reads poetry beautifully. And I was quite shocked by that. I mean, I was, how old are you in the 1st grade? About 6 or 7. So my love of language and expression has been with me always. I sang in my 1st grade, my 6th grade school auditorium for the first time. In the 9th grade, I performed on guitar, barely, but we had also a school event. I took ballet. My mother taught me how to play the piano. Of course, I didn't stay with piano, but unfortunately. I studied French language, which also paid off. Again, expression. This is kind of interesting. In one of my electives in college was South Indian singing, if you can imagine that. South Indian singing, it's a thing, and you do it with your hands and your voice. So it was really quite unique. Of course, I was involved with theater for many years, and then the civic chorale where I was singing. My next thing, nature. As all kids, we spent oodles of time outdoors. I mean, if you can imagine the weather being always, except when it was raining, perfect. You know, you can be outside for hours. We spent hours in nature. We spent hours in the water, in the ocean. My dad taught us how to surf. In Diamond Head, I don't know how much of you know this, but Diamond Head was played a crucial part during the war years. There were bunkers that were established in the hills, and there's also there's some kind of some buildings in the middle of Diamond Head in the crater itself. But when I was a kid, you could walk around. There were trails up and through the mountain, and we found these bunkers. And inside the bunkers, I mean, they were steel-like rooms, and I just could only imagine, what did they use these for? What was in here? You know, there must have been people at one time. But anyway, that's part of spending time in nature. We walked to school like lots of kids did in those days. Nowadays, parents drive their kids, even if it's a block, you know. But we walked, and it was like 3 miles, I think, to get to our school. Mom didn't care, you know. We were safe.
Reminds me of my dad. He said he walked 10 miles to school. I never did believe him, though. And that was up in McGee, Mississippi. Anyway, yeah.
So one of my really fondest memories was in a place called the Meadow, and this is on top of a really tall mountain in Honolulu. Of course, it's behind a gate, a locked gate. Well, we kind of found a way around it. And this place it's a clearing. There's Norfolk pine all around in a circle. And we would go up there, my friends and I, we would spend hours up there just listening to the wind and smelling the pine trees and doing other things. We were teenagers. But it was a lovely place. Love of travel, I think from my earliest days. Getting on that ship when I was 6 years old and knowing that the world was big and there was a lot to explore. When I was 18 years old, I got on a ship again, and this time was a semester at sea, and I got to see the world. We went to Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong. We went to the Seychelles. We went to Sri Lanka. We went to India. And all the way around Africa. And in all of these places, the memories are still as bright as they were the times that I was there. I have a list of things, but you'd be bored if I told you. But everything was a first. Everything was a first. And I was seeing and experiencing things that I never knew existed. And then when I got off the ship, my boyfriend, not this boyfriend, I met him in Europe, and we traveled around Europe by hitchhiking. $200, and 2 months later, we swept in fields, and we got invited into people's homes. I mean, we had a blast.
Wow. Tell us a little bit about your trip. Was it 3 years ago you went to Egypt, or was it longer than that?
It was February 2nd, 2022, all of those twos and zeros.
And why did you want to go? What led you to do that?
I think I had been dreaming about Egypt since I can't remember. As long as I can remember, I wanted to go to Egypt. I stumbled upon this video. It was an interview of the man that was kind of coordinating this trip. and his name is Matteo Di Stefano. He's a teacher, and he has memories of Egypt. He has memories of Atlantis. I mean, the man has lived many lifetimes, and he has these memories. So I found him, and then at the end of this interview, he said, the interviewer said, well, is there anything you want to tell the audience before we leave? And he said, we have a trip planned for Egypt. And the light bulb went off, and I didn't even think about it. I went to the website, and I signed up for the trip. I knew nothing about what they were going to do or why they were going. I just knew I had to be there. So yeah, that was quite a moving experience. It was during a week, and during this week there were 1,440 participants. We met, there were talks, there was music, and at the culmination of this, there was an event at the Sphinx. So each day, this man, Matthias, would go into the pyramid with a group of 100 people, and getting up into the pyramid for a claustrophobic person is very difficult. It's a very, very, very small enclosed stairway up into the room. But I had this lovely man who took my hand and got me up through the pyramid, and this was my part of this was to be in this group. One of the because the whole point of this exercise was to open a portal and to allow for the mending of the matrix. So in doing so, each of us represented a point on the earth as a node, and a node is a point of, east, west, or north, south, a conjugation of these lines where they cross. And these are all energy points around the globe. So he was using us as living sources of energy to ground that in and bring it all together. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. But during this event, and during that time while I was there, we were in this sort of like a trance-like state. We were chanting. He was talking, and I saw the pyramid open, and I saw the most beautiful violet-colored sky, and these things are hard to talk about, but it was transformative. Let me just say that. And then the other part of this experience, we got to go to the Sphinx, and at the Sphinx, the first time I walked up to this monumental statue, the tears just streamed down my face, and it was like something was saying, "Welcome home." I don't know anything other than that.
It's beautiful, beautiful. Well, Joan, I know that you, I don't know what we call it, channel higher beings, whether it's your higher self or whatever. Could you tell us a little bit about how you prepare yourself to do that and how much quiet time you have at home?
Well, I get up early. I get up just after 4 because I need time in the morning to read, meditate, practice music, and then I go to the gym. So I try to cover all bases. But yeah, this started back seriously, I guess, back in 2017. And we were talking this morning about illness. Excuse me. I think it's water might help. The body's emotional response sometimes causes illness. And I was I was making meditation a daily routine rather than sporadically. And during that time, I came down with this illness, and it was a serious gastrointestinal reaction, and I had never had any other really serious illnesses in my life. And I sought out a doctor who was able to help me through this, but in retrospect, when I looked back, I knew that the soul was making a bigger impression in my life, a more contact, more expansion. I don't know how to say it any better than that. And it was expressing to me it was like a needing to cleanse the body, and this is the way it was going to do that. After that, and I got well, I cured the whole thing, and I just spent time reading the books that I was speaking about earlier, this esoteric material, teaching me about the role of the soul and the role and the use of meditation and what to look for, what the stumbling blocks are. There's a wonderful piece of work that Beth is actually, she's the teacher for it. It's Patanjali's Ajna Yoga. This is about spirit connection. And what I was being told was that sitting in the silence it's like learning how to drive a car, I guess. You know, you have to be still and you have to listen. And those are two things that many of us can't do, or it's really difficult because we play these loops of chatter in our minds. And to get that chatter to be quiet takes practice. You have to, here's how I do it. Okay, so I'm playing this tape, right? And I'm trying to be quiet. And the more you're trying to be quiet, the more it's running. So at some point you just need to stop. And I keep this little trash can right here at my right side. If there's something that comes here and I don't need it, I just dump it in the trash can and put the lid on it. So I started doing that. And after time, I was becoming more and more successful at it. And one of the things that I learned in this material that I was reading was you can go in these meditative trips and you can go all over the world and even beyond it. And I was having a lot of these astral projections. What I learned later were astral projections because I was like in Jupiter and all over the place. So once I learned to tamp that down and quiet that, and that's all your body doing that. That's your emotions doing that. Then I quieted the emotions, and I went into a higher mental state, I guess you will. It's quieter up there. So I just, through practice in this little trash can over here, I just learned how to keep it quiet. I use music, and what else? Stones are helpful. Lots of things are helpful. But I think you have to listen to your body, and your body will kind of help you learn how to keep the chatter out. It's just a matter of practice. And the timing is very good too. I use that time in the morning because, from my understanding, the veil is very thin between 3:30 and 4:30 in the morning. And oftentimes, if you don't understand this, you wake up at 3:30. There's a reason you're waking up at 3:30. Listen to yourself. Listen to what you've been dreaming. There's often a message there.
Interesting. I want to, you reminded me of something, and I want to ask you about it. when I'm praying here, and I'll typically do this, I will ask people to close their eyes and then to relax the muscles around the eyes and the face. And what happens with me, it immediately, when I do that, my focus goes inward. And the focus goes, that's when I know that my heart and my mind are connected, is when, and it's just immediate now, just going, yeah. And so when I'm praying, I started to do a meditation the other day where I was praying for every cell in my body. And all of a sudden I thought, oh, wait a minute, something's different. I'm still in my mind, my normal mind. So I stopped immediately. Okay. Went, found that place, allow the focus to go inward. And I said, oh, yeah, there's where I connect with God, right there. And it's hard to explain, but does that make sense to you?
Oh, yeah. One of the things that I was seeing early on, I get these visions, was pyramids. I'd see pyramids. I'd see two, one inverted over the other, and I didn't know what it meant, It's a symbol. It means something. And now lately I see the 5-pointed star. And those are symbols from other dimensions, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's from other dimensions. Yes, and in fact, speaking of, this focusing in, if you will put your focus on this center right here, that's your, that's one of the points of this, what they call the crown tetrahedron, which looks like a pyramid, that this point right here has a direct link to the pineal. The pineal gland is that door that opens and sends you off into this higher mind.
Okay, that makes sense.
I also wanted to mention, I use a face mask to keep out light. Light can often disturb this state of mind that you're trying to get to. So I find that helpful too. Even though the room is dark, I'm still, doing this. So.
What are some of the principles that you've learned by your meditation and your writing and channeling that we can live by? Some of the, say if we had some new codes for living, what would you suggest?
Oh, new codes.
Awareness. What was it you said to at first about awareness?
Awareness, if we're on this journey, I call it the soul journey, because for lack of better words, we have to start with self-awareness. Self-awareness leads to understanding, and understanding leads to wisdom. I mean, if you don't know what you are or who you are, there's nowhere to go. So self-awareness definitely is been a practice for me. In fact, when I'm probably going to repeat myself, but that's okay. I want to give you this little brief message. When I started on this meditative practice and so forth, and I was reading about how the principles of this hermetic practices, one of the things that is absolutely necessary is to be aware of your emotions. And as we were talking about this morning, it's not just awareness that you need, it's learning how to manage them. Everybody has emotions, and a lot of these emotions are helpful, and a lot of them are really a hindrance to us. But if we don't know what's going on in ourselves and how we're affecting other people, then we're kind of lost. We're just treading water. We're in the wilderness. Once we become aware of who we are, what our words are, and how we're having an effect on other people, then we can become our own teacher. We can pick up on those clues and those little nuances from friends, loved ones who say, well, maybe, and you know, if you're sensitive enough or you're aware enough, then you can take those and you can use that as a teaching moment. And in those teaching moments, when we manage our emotions, it's about realizing, first of all, we don't know everything. We're not in control of anybody. The only sphere of our influence is right here.
You're right.
So when we have that amount of self-control, all of this interaction that we have with people becomes a teaching moment or it becomes a learning moment. That's kind of what we're doing our whole lives, aren't we?
That's beautiful. Yeah, a teaching moment or a learning moment. We were talking about control a little bit in our class this morning, or our discussion group. We were talking about healthy emotions and unhealthy emotions and how they affect your life. And if you're a person that naturally needs to control everything around you and everyone, and the only way you can be at peace is that you feel in control of all that. You have some work to do, right?
Yeah. It was a big thing in my family. My mother was, actually, if I can say it truthfully, she was a bully.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
I learned to be quiet. It was the only way I knew how to survive, was to be quiet. And then I learned, you know, I can be a victim. I stayed that way for a long time. Until I learned there's a better way than that.
Right.
That took me a long time.
Right. Because if you're a victim, you get attention and
I didn't want attention.
you're excused from a lot of things.
I was a victim because I was afraid of myself. I was afraid of speaking out. I was afraid of speaking up or expressing myself. That's why it's so important for me to speak now.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, Joan is going to give the message the first Sunday in August, and come to think of it, I guess I won't have a discussion group that morning because we're going to see our other daughter in Hood River, Oregon.
Oh, good.
And Sherry and Shelby are going with us, and anyway, Joan will be giving the message that day.
It was a train.
Yeah, train. And so if you didn't hear from her today what you wanted to hear, I'm sure she'll address it then. But was there anything else you wanted to say today, Joan, as we're ending our time here?
I do.
Okay.
So my only goal right now is to observe and participate as soul directs. That's my goal. I know a lot of people have other goals, but that's mine. So I'm just listening and allowing Spirit to just set my feet where they need to be. Also, it's my hope for all of us and the world to awaken to this greater plan that's in play and join in building a peaceful world together. That's my hope. So, thank you.
Great.